with disappointment comes when expectations aren't met. And when we set those expectations through our processes, it helps us with those trust issues. You see what I'm saying? So that's kind of how it's all connected. So self awareness is a great thing. I think it's all of those issues, those deeply emotional issues, are all those issues are the biggest roadblocks for entrepreneurs in hiring and managing effectively.
Welcome to this week's episode of the Online Creator Podcast. My name is Kim, your podcast host, business mentor, and audio storyteller. This show is a space to inspire through conversations and community to help us keep connected, keep inspired, and keep moving towards our goals. Expect to hear honest conversations and real-life experiences from entrepreneurs at every stage of business and from a wide range of industries. Find your confidence, see what is possible, and build the legacy that you have dreamed of. Let's get started. Hi, Zara. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. I can't wait to dig into all things that you do, but yes, it's just so lovely meeting you.
Thank you so much for having me, Kim. It's just been a pleasure. And I love the podcast. I went and I listened to a few episodes and I'm now a fan. So
I appreciate that. It means a lot. And most of us podcast hosts, we pour a lot of time and energy into, production and who we have on and content. So it means a lot coming from a fellow creator in this
yeah.
online space. So I appreciate that so much. Introduce who you are, what you do, and who you serve. I love always starting with that. I used to do live introductions, and then I'm like, wait a sec, like you guys can introduce yourselves so much better.
Yes, absolutely. So my name is Zhara-Marie. I am an online business manager. An online business manager and an operational strategist or a system strategist. I have a very interesting story because I'm actually a lawyer in the Caribbean. I graduated law school, decided that I didn't want to use my law degree in a very traditional way, moved from law into running a social media agency for law firms. And so then after running that social media agency and diving into the online creator space, I learned a lot about systems and operations and all of that. And actually pivoted 2 years later in January of this year, 2024, into being an online business manager. And hopefully that will build out in an agency late, maybe in the next couple of years. But for now, I'm enjoying the bliss of being a solopreneur again. Currently I do serve law firms and creative entrepreneurs. So that's my niche.
Okay, that's so cool. And how did you decide that online business management was where you wanted to kind of evolve into? Was it something that you saw as a need when you were working with your social media clients?
Yes. So I recognized when I started looking, okay, let's start backtrack a little bit. Social media started draining me, right? I kind of fell out of love with the science of it, fell out of love with just the art of it. And I was okay doing it for myself, but I didn't want to do it for clients anymore. So I started looking into the areas of my business that I liked. And I realized I really liked the operations. I really liked the systems. I love the automations. I loved the management of the business and the management of the people, projects, and stuff like that. Then I started thinking about my clients and their needs. And I decided to just dive into like a bit online, like a digital business management training program. And I loved it. And I think my passions led me there. In human design, I am a manifesting generator. So I do a lot of things and I like doing a lot of things. And I think being an OBM and a system strategist keeps me going, keeps me on the ball.
It's broader, right?
Yes, it's a broader scope. I get to bring in all aspects of me. I love diversity. I love doing different things. And kind of showing up as an OBM looks different. So, like, I like working with virtual law firms because I know the legal jargon. I know how law firms should operate. Law firms don't have to train me into understanding their language because I'm already educated in that sphere. But then, how I show up for a law firm in New Mexico is not the same way I show up for a law firm in Atlanta. And then for the creative entrepreneurs, when I'm showing up for people who do web design versus somebody who's a copywriter or somebody who's a social media agency owner, you just show up in different ways because being an online business manager means managing that particular business, and every business is so different. So it keeps me on my toes for sure and keeps me busy.
I love that you said you're a manifesting generator. I
Mhm.
would love to know the percentage of online entrepreneurs who are like, because I am as well. And it's so funny because for the longest time, so I've been doing this for 4 years this spring, which is hard to believe. But for the longest time, I just kept feeling like I need to stay in this zone. I need to be known for just this. But it was so I just knew there was more because I didn't want to be just known as the podcast girl because I am so much more. I bring so much more knowledge to the table, just like you do, just like so many of us do. We have this life experience, a school experience, academic experience, this human experience, and we want to try and explore. And I think that there are so many opportunities and so many doors that can open if we don't close ourselves into one box. So I love that you've evolved your business. I love that you've ebbed and flowed. I think that's what entrepreneurship should be about. And
Yes.
but it's scary, right? It's scary being treated to a new
Oh,
area
wow.
and being known for that and
Yeah. It sure is
all of it.
scary. And for me, the fact that I liked different things actually is one of my deepest insecurities because I'm from a very traditional space. And for anybody who grew up Caribbean, there's a lot of pressure on you. Or, I mean, even not even just Caribbean, but you grew up with very traditional parents, right?
Yeah.
You grew up understanding that you needed to be a lawyer, you needed to be a doctor, a nurse, an accountant, because those are stable careers. And when I
Hmm.
decided to launch out in the online business world and left my cushy legal job, it felt scary because I felt like I didn't have that backbone and that support. And then I kept on changing. And when you're in the online space or the entrepreneurship space, you learn, you pivot as you encounter different things. If you were in a regular 9 to 5, you would have been getting promotions, things would have been changing in that job. So as entrepreneurs, we have to make our promotions. We have to make what that
Yes.
newness looks like. And I realized that instead of having this as one of my biggest insecurities, why not use the fact that I'm so diverse as my biggest strength? That's why I can position
Yes.
myself as like a unicorn in my space because I
Love
have these
that.
strengths. And I think shifting that perspective and having that mindset has put me in rooms that I couldn't have gotten in if I never had the confidence to know that I'm not confused. This is just a strength that I have, that I like to do multiple things. So I totally understand.
And how amazing to be able to work with you. Do you call yourself like a fractional OBM or like how do you work with people? I probably am jumping ahead, but
Yeah, no, no, no. So right now I call myself just a OBM, just an online business
Mhm.
manager and a system strategist. So I do have like retainer clients, and then I have space for like one-off projects. So for
Right.
somebody, and that project looks different for different people. So like for example, I met a wedding planner last week and she just wanted a whole like Asana build out to help her clients. So what would her client experience look like? So for some days, I'm a client experience strategist and I help people with their client
Yeah.
experience and elevating that. For some days, I'm building SOPs. So as I said, I guess maybe calling myself a fraction COO might be something that I start labeling myself as. But to be honest, these labels are labels and there are like
They just are what they are.
slight differences between them all. So who knows what I'll be next week.
Yeah. But I just think it's amazing to be able to, as like a smaller solopreneur, and
Mhm.
I'm hoping to grow my team, but it's going to be a small team because I don't want to be managing a whole bunch of people. That's
Oh
just not why
yes,
I drove into this world. Fantastic if that's what you want to do, but for
same.
me, I know I want to have a small team. So hiring a full time OBM would be overwhelming for me right now. But being able to hire you on a retainer basis or, like I said, as a fractional OBM for a certain amount of time. Wow, like could that ever help propel me forward quicker in different areas, right? Because
Oh
maybe I
yes,
am just looking at, oh, I just want to make sure that my client experience is like on par. Because we know that if our client experience is amazing, those clients will come back, they'll refer, all
yes.
the good things. So I think there's just so many different areas that you could really support and dive in. And not only is it amazing to have you as like this amazing resource for us,
Mhm.
but just like there's just so many different areas, so many different hats that we can't
Yes,
all wear.
yes,
We
yes.
can't be experts in all the
Can't.
areas.
No, no. And even as an OBM, as a systems person, I still have other systems persons who are way more brilliant than me because I'm also in a new industry. And I have no issues booking a call and say, hey, I'm working with a client who needs this. And I have no idea where to start, but I'm going to book a call and you're going to help me through. Because I promised
Yeah.
my clients always to manage their things. I never told them I'm going to build everything from scratch, you know? And that's something that I'm always open and transparent about as well.
Okay, I can't wait now to get into, as an OBM, what you are seeing is one of the number one things that is holding us entrepreneurs back, because you must see all sorts of personalities, when you talk to new clients and or what you're seeing in this online space. I would love to hear your take and your perspective on that.
Well, honestly, I think there are different things that hold different people back depending on who we're talking about. But for the most part, I think there's a lot of trauma that holds us all back when it comes to delegating, growing a team, and having that freedom of thought to try new things, right? And that's why I always say that there are some things in entrepreneurship that we need to let go of. And there are so many things that we need to heal from, or else those things trickle into how we run our business. So trauma based on trust issues, we have trauma has given us trust issues, control issues, and deeply ingrained feelings of abandonment. And I find that underneath the layers of all of that, if we peel back the layers of fear of delegation, we'll find all of those issues coming up, right? And that's why I'm a very big advocate for therapy, and I'm very big advocate of understanding yourself and being aware. So for example, I know that I have some trust issues, right? So because I have trust issues, I'm gonna make sure that there are systems in place for anybody who I'm hiring. Before I hire, I'm going to make sure that I put SOPs in place, which are standard operating procedures for anybody who's listening and you've never heard of SOPs before. SOPs are the reason McDonald's tastes the same way everywhere you go. It's the same way Wendy's has the same logo and the same type of recipes. That same apple pecan salad is the same place, same thing at every Wendy's. It's because they have standard operating procedure. It's some icky corporate term that I think most more small business owners need to implement into their systems, right? So it is because of those systems that I'll be able to overcome such trust issues. Because if a new hire comes in, they'll know exactly how I want things done. They'll have a step by step process of how I want things done, especially if you're hiring somebody like a VA or OBM. Well, OBM helps you to make those systems. Okay? A VA, a social media manager, you'll help them to know what's your strategy, what's your messaging, what are those things that they're supposed to use to make their jobs easier, and also what are you expecting from them. With disappointment comes when expectations aren't met, and when we set those expectations through our processes, it helps us with those trust issues. You see what I'm saying? So that's kind of how it's all connected. So self-awareness is a great thing. I think it's all of those issues, those deeply emotional issues, are all those issues are the biggest roadblocks for entrepreneurs in hiring and managing effectively.
Yes, I that's such a good example, and I think people just get scared, or they think that, oh, I'm not big enough yet to have an SOP for this, for this and
Right.
for this, and then they grow, and then they're overwhelmed because they have to do the work, but
Hmm.
they need to hire, and then they have to backtrack. So going from that example, what's an easy way to just start with an SOP if that is something that is holding them back from starting? Because I think that's such a great example. If you have things in place, then hiring doesn't feel as overwhelming.
Yeah.
But have you seen some great examples of a smaller business starting an SOP in a simplified way?
Yeah, I can even use my example, right? So I started my business fresh in January. So that 4 months ago. And because I've had experiences before in the social media agency, I knew that I didn't want to get to the place where I had three employees or three contractors on my team and I had nothing to give them. So that's what happened to me. I was there, I had three people, I had another manager, a copywriter, and a graphic designer. And all of us were just doing our own thing. And every time I needed to hire somebody else to kind of replace them, what happened was that I had to do that training all over again. And it basically wasn't efficient. So I found myself in a place where I had like 100 SOPs to do, and it was a lot. So
Hmm.
when I started this one by myself, I decided that firstly, when I'm doing my regular job on a day-to-day basis, whenever things would pop up, and I think that I would want to delegate it, I'm just going to write it down. So
Right.
my first hire, I would want to hire a VA, for example. So I'm doing my checking my emails and um I am maybe building a ClickUp base or whatever and I say, I should get my VA to move all of these things from ClickUp to a Google Docs, for example. And I'm gonna write that down. By the end of month one, I had a list of all the things I would want to delegate. So I'd
Right.
want to delegate checking my emails and filtering them. I would want to delegate making sure that my content that I have created is posted. I want to delegate, for example, responding to comments on Instagram, right? So now I have three things that I want to delegate, three things that I have would have normally done in my business. So now because I have that in my head, it's very simple.
Hmm.
I now need to make a SOP for them. And one of the easiest ways to make SOPs, especially in this age with AI, is to use the AI to your advantage. So one of my best and favorite tools to use is Loom. So this is like a hack, right? You can go on Loom, which is a screen recording platform, and you can check your emails and filter them in the way that you normally filter them, and you can talk over. When that is finished, you can extract that transcript, drop it into ChatGPT and say, hey, help me to create a SOP for this.
Perfect.
ChatGPT gives you an SOP, and then you will go in, of course, to include the things that they didn't include because, of course, it's a machine. But that's kind of one of the easiest ways to start when you have nothing to start from. One, start by writing down the task in your regular day to day that you'd want to delegate someday, making a list of them, and then two, tackling that list bit by bit. Whenever you're going to be doing it anyways, I'm
Right.
checking my emails anyways, might as well screen record it and then use the transcript for that. So that's an
Yeah,
easy way.
that's so smart. I love Loom. I love using audio because it
Yes.
just is a way to walk through something, right? And it's
Uh,
simplifying it and using these platforms and tech platforms to really support our business, especially while we're just starting out. And even as we're growing, like
yes.
use what we have.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think so often sometimes we add all these new things and we don't even need them.
Oh my goodness. And even like especially if you're in a creative space where a lot of your instructions are visual anyway and not necessarily a step by step, videos are great for that. Audio is great
Yeah.
for that. A new person coming on, they'll be able to see step by step. What do I do now? Click top left screen, this arrow. And then there goes all your trust issues. There goes all your control issues. There goes your tendency to micromanage and be over people's back because guess what?
Right.
You've put systems in place to prevent that. And
Ah,
then
so
there's a
smart.
greater level of accountability. Now, that's kind of where OBMs come in because a lot of entrepreneurs, they don't want to be checking in with people. They
Hmm.
don't have the bandwidth for that because you're delivering a service, you're delivering a product, and you're dealing with your clients. So you have a team, it starts growing. When it gets over 3, 4, 5, 6, there's so many people and you would rather be delivering your service. And that's kind of where help comes in, having that manager to bridge that gap for you.
It's really a shift between being an employee in your business and being a CEO.
Yes.
And that's tough for a lot of us because we don't want to lose the joy of doing what we're doing because that's why we started our business.
Yes.
But if we want it to grow and scale, we need to know wear the CEO hat and really delegate and figure out where we need help delegating or where we need support in our business to be able to like let go of some of those things because some of those things are very time consuming.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Operations and admin? Oh, my goodness.
Right? I mean, that's just a whole nother thing. And then on top of that, you have to be the marketer and the copywriter and
Yes.
all those good things in there too.
Networker.
And networking is it's so important. Imagine this, a customized website design that is as unique as you are and done in 1 week. Think of us as your in-house website designer. We offer a semi-custom show it website design that is ideal for the established coach, creative, online business owner who is ready to create a presence online and is ready to take action quickly. We build out a layout that nurtures your visitors, SEO best practices to help you get ranked in Google, development of 5+ pages to drive traffic, and training and launch support so that you can update your website after our time is done. You have the choice. You can keep spinning your wheels and flying by the seat of your pants, or you can have a strategically designed website that allows you to connect and convert, because that is what your business deserves. If you're interested in learning more, check out the link in the show notes to see if Website in a Week is the right fit for you. I would love to hear what your take on hiring looks like as a small business owner that is looking to grow and scale. Let's say we've done all those steps that you suggested because I love that. I mean, it's just simplifying what you're doing in a day and then figuring out what you can easily lift off. Okay, so let's say we're in that space, we're ready to lift off, we're ready to do our first or second hire. What's your take on that? What does that look like?
I think your first hire should be basically the first set of things that take up the most amount of time that you don't like to do. So I find that it's hard to let go of things because you're good at it. So I'm great at making graphics, for example, or I'm great at editing podcasts, for example. But
Mm-hmm.
it takes so much time and it's actually setting me back. So that might look differently for different people. Some people's first hire is a VA, but some people's first hire is a graphic designer. You'll never know. It just depends on the type of business. So a good test is to check out what are the things that are taking up most of your time that you can easily hand off now because of the processes that you've put in place. And after you've made that decision and you've decided, okay, I think maybe a VA is best. A VA is maybe one of the easiest hires to do in the online business world
Mm-hmm.
because you'll have different types of VAs, right? So after figuring out that, okay, I need a VA who is more of an implementer. So a VA is not going to be able to do any strategizing for you, any higher level, unless you have specialist VAs that I'll talk about a little bit. So they'll be able to implement something that you created.
Right.
When you figure it out, you think about, do I need a specialist graphic designer? Do I need a specialist VA? You have like tech VAs, you have generalist VAs, you have like social media VAs, content
Mhm.
specialist VAs. So you can figure out, do you need a specialist in that area? And then after that, I always like to have a hiring process. And the hiring process starts with putting together like a hiring brief so that you can remind yourself why you need this person. What are the things that you require from this person who is going to come? And how are you going to position this role as a role that great talent would want to be a part?
Mhm.
Like, are you making sure that you are offering a competitive salary, a competitive hourly rate? What are the other benefits with working with your small business? Are you going to maybe host a a virtual retreat once per year to bring everybody together? Do you give this gifts once in a while, a $10 Starbucks card? But how are you going to position this job to attract the top quality talent, right? So
Mhm.
after putting that job brief together to finalize why you need this role, how this role is going to help you move from step A to step B, then you can go ahead and you can create that job description. And creating that job description helps to one, to set your expectation for the person who is applying, and also so that they'll know what you're looking for, right? So expectations on your end and expectations on their end, and to kind of set up that job application now to also be attractive to the best people.
For
And
sure.
always, always, always try to include like a question in there that I like to call your eliminating question. So for example, I was hiring a social media manager about a month ago. And one of my eliminating questions was, have you realized that Instagram has been weird lately? If you have, what have you been doing to deal with it? And a lot of people said no. And if you said no, it means that you haven't been spending a lot of time on the app, you know? So I want the people to say, yes, I realize that Instagram has been a pain. I and that means my reels aren't the words are disappearing, or the reach is down, or I haven't been showing up to the people who actually follow me. I want to hear that. And that out of a application list of maybe 50 people, I had a short list of 5 just because I had that one question in it. It was so easy
Perfect.
because if you said no, it simply means that you're not the candidate for me because I'm
Right.
having
No.
issues, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of what the hiring process entails. One, after you figured out what role, positioning that role as a role that will attract great talent, people should want to work with you, you know?
Right.
And then when you attract that great talent, and making sure that you have filter questions in that job application, and then also, I'm a very big fan of paid trials. And that's because you get to see people working actionably and you get to use their work. So I pay them for their work. So if I need a
Right.
trial for 2, 3 hours, I'm making sure that it's a paid trial that benefits me, if
For sure.
because I'm paying you for it for this. So usually giving a very similar project to the top 2 or top 3 candidates and paying them for their time, however long it takes, usually giving them a cap as well. And that helps to see type of work, and also to see some of those soft skills that are so, so, so important. So
Oh,
I
yeah.
know that
Yeah,
was a
there's
long
so
answer, but
no, there's so much in there because there's, like, even you just mentioning soft skills, those are so
yes.
important, and they're overlooked too on the hiring
Hmm.
process, and they shouldn't be because
Oh
it's like
no.
communication and all those things are so, so important. What's
Mhm.
your take on hiring in-house versus a contract employee? Because I know you just kinda touched on hiring somebody at the start, kind of on a project basis, test the waters to see if you actually work well together and jive well together and see where their skill set's at. I kind of feel for me that hiring a contract employee kind of feels the same way, and maybe I'm wrong. I would love someday to have an in-house small team because I feel like you could do so much more with that.
Yeah.
But it scares me because there's so
It
many
does.
pieces with that versus as
Yeah.
a contract employee, especially when you're just starting. But what's your take on that?
Absolutely. Well, legally, there are lots of implications between hiring like a contractor and an employee. You have a whole different set of tax obligations, a whole different set of legal obligations whenever you hire an employee. It's a longer term commitment that could potentially be beneficial to your business from a tax perspective in the long run. And that differs based on the country you're in and based on the state that you're in, right?
Mm.
So let's start with that. Knowing that your business is in a place where it can manage that long term commitment is one of the first things we need to consider before hiring somebody long term. Because with hiring a long term employee, somebody who's classified as an employee in most countries, in most states, that comes with a requirement to provide benefits, comes
Right.
with a requirement to provide health insurance, to provide contributions to some household fund, contributions to different things, giving them paid time off, and all those things. And there's just a higher level of obligation. So you will also have to make sure that you are emotionally, financially, and all the alleys psychologically in a place where you can accommodate that. One of the benefits of having an employee though is that they're your employee. They have
Mhm.
that fullness within the business, and they feel indebted to their craft. Versus hiring a contractor who you are another client. And
Right.
yes, as a fellow contractor, you can get immersed in the culture of the business, but at the end of the day, you still you still aren't fully invested, right?
Right.
And I think it works for different people based on where they are in business. But I think as a contractor, easier for you to start out trying with contractors. And then as your business evolves, if you're in a place where you can facilitate that long term commitment, you transition into it. And then having that small team in house as well, okay, so let's backtrack a little bit. Sometimes we misclassify. So sometimes we have contractors based on the classifications in whatever country you're in when you're listening to this. Please pay attention to some of the classification requirements because sometimes you have contractors working certain amount of hours and you're offering certain benefits to contractors that you shouldn't. And it kind of blurs the line, right? So all in all, main difference is making sure that you're in a position to facilitate that long-term commitment. So that's one. And then two, making sure that you have structures and systems in place to be able to accommodate a full-term employee.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I think having all of that knowledge that you just shared with us will really help remove that fear that comes with, do I hire? How do I delegate? All of those things that are really holding us back and stunting our growth as entrepreneurs, creating these businesses that we really want to see thrive. But in
Yes.
order to do that, we need to be prepared in some
Yes.
capacity, right? That only makes sense. So really
If you
that
don't want to go
mind,
crazy.
yeah. No, you don't want to. And mindset matters and joy matters. I spoke with a really successful entrepreneur here about a month ago, and that was like the biggest takeaway from our conversation was she's like, you don't want to lose joy in what you're doing. So
Yeah.
remember that. And at the end of the day, I work way harder in this business, in this job, in this role than I ever did in the 20 years I worked for the big corporations. So
Oh, yeah.
it's pretty crazy. It's pretty, and I think that's why there is a lot of that mindset stuff because this is our baby. Like we have worked hard, like really put a lot of time and energy and thought behind this. And so whoever we hire and bring in, we really want them to buy into some of that and to have their own joy, obviously, to be
Yes.
excited about the craft that they're doing, like you said, because that shows in the work 110%
Oh,
every
yes.
day of the week.
Oh, yes. And building company culture is something that you can do with contractors as well.
No.
You don't have to have full-time employees to build company culture and to help to pass that vision on. But a big part of it is that you have to fully understand that vision. And
Right.
you have to also attract people who understand that vision. So remember when I was saying that at the end of the day, having people who genuinely want to work with you is something that is priceless because anybody can get technical skills, right?
Right.
Anybody can get technical skills, but what will set a specific hire apart from another one is somebody who genuinely appreciates what your vision is. And that's why it might seem like this boring business stuff to sit down and write what are your values? What are things that you stand by? Who do you serve and why do you feel so passionately about serving them? What are the things that you want your business and your company to get known for? And as a contractor, how do I, or as an employee, how will I benefit from being a part of this? And
Yeah.
little moves like that and being very stable minded about those things, no matter what the pivot will look like,
Mhm.
that will help to build company culture. And company culture, especially a very strong one, is so contagious. Like good culture
Yeah.
is so contagious.
Yes, yes, yes. I love that. It's so important and to revisit it because I think
Yes.
those, maybe our mission changes a little bit along the
Yes.
way, right? And
Yes.
maybe who we're trying to reach or who we want to work with changes and evolves a bit. And I know there's a specific entrepreneur client that I love working with, and it shows, right? Like when they keep coming back or when they refer, and I'm like, okay, like I'm onto something here, right? Because it shows. But now that you have created this business and this new evolution of who you are and what you're doing, is there a favorite platform or system that you would love to recommend that you're just like, oh, this has really saved me time, this has saved me energy outside of like the SOPs?
um, no, actually, I don't have a favorite platform, and I'll tell you why. I don't have a favorite one because I think our brains are so different. And I think that we can build out systems and we have this software loyalty to the extent that sometimes we don't even use the things that we build. So one
Hmm.
of the things I live by is always to use the system that works for your brain. Okay.
Right.
Like, don't try to overcomplicate things. Everybody's talking about Notion, ClickUp, Asana, Monday, Basecamp. If your notepad is keeping you efficient, your Google Docs is keeping you sane, you are organized, your team understands, your contractors understand, and you have a workflow that makes sense
Hmm.
for your client, the fancy tech, the platforms, they do not matter. Personally, I love Asana and I love Dubsado. And they have their flaws. Dubsado especially is
For sure.
so annoying sometimes. But I
Hmm.
like it and it works with how my brain operates, and especially as an international business owner, I found that those platforms just work better with I guess all the technicalities that I have to go around working with predominantly like US and Canadian based entrepreneurs. So whatever system that you use, whatever tech that you use, the conversation should never start with your tech stack because we
Right.
all have processes. We all have things in our head. If you have a business, you have system. Okay.
Hmm.
Systems aren't software. They're two different things. You have a system and you have a process. Now, in making sure that that system is more efficient, we can build out efficient systems in anything, any
Right.
software, to be honest.
That's it.
I'm not like a Notion expert, but I know people who are. So if I have a client who comes and they're like, I need to build this thing out in Notion, I'll get them a Notion expert. So yeah, I guess that's kind of how I would answer it by saying I don't have any favorite tools because I think you can do all things differently. But
Hmm.
yeah, but shameless plug for Dubsado for client management. Personally, that's my favorite tool. I don't really recommend it to clients all the time just because it might not work for their business model, might not work for their budgets, it might not work for how their brain operates.
Right.
Some people do not like the UX of Airtable, but I think Airtable is super powerful. Do I always use all of the features? Absolutely not. Um,
Hmm.
I'm a Google girl, so you'll find me in Excel and you'll find me in Microsoft, in
Yeah.
not Microsoft,
Yeah.
in Google Docs, you'll find
Yes.
me
That's
there.
amazing.
So
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
yeah, that's
sometimes the simpler platforms, the better. But I also
yes.
agree, like Dubsado's been so useful and handy because I like platforms that do more than one thing. Like if
Yes,
I'm going to pay for it, I want it to do a few things for me and my business. But you're
absolutely.
right, it really depends. And I have fallen down those rabbit holes where, oh, well, maybe I should learn Notion because it does look very creative visually. And it's, oh my God, I like lost a whole weekend learning Notion and like creating this beautiful home page or landing page, whatever you call it. I don't use it. I don't use
Yep.
it. I've learned ClickUp. I still go back to Asana, but I'm also in ClickUp a little bit. Like it's so easy as an entrepreneur to fall into all these different things, but to also just learn to give yourself a little grace. Give yourself, if you want to learn it and try it and play with it, absolutely.
Yes.
Just maybe be mindful of the time.
Mhm. And if
Because
you have the time, go for it. But
if
yeah.
you don't, maybe use those slow seasons. And I think that's the other important thing is to use those slow seasons in our business, not I always try to look at things from a positive lens. So
Mhm.
if I'm a little bit lower on client work, I'm going to take the opportunity to learn that new platform or
Yes.
to revisit my mission and values and all that good stuff, that foundation of my business. Because I don't always have the time, through September and the spring, I am like, people are wanting stuff from me. And so it's really helpful to be able to lean into those slower times to be able to do those really valuable and important tasks that we need to do. It can be overwhelming, but I think it's just to simplify and to streamline is so, so important. We've covered so much good stuff. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you'd like to add?
Well, I think I would also add that when it comes to this whole idea of systems, it's thrown around a lot in the online business world. You hear systems, get systems, figure out your system. And it might seem a little overwhelming. Whoa. back in college, I used to clean houses during the summertime. So when built like luxury apartments were finished, I was working with this small company and, for a little extra buck, poor college kid. And I used to go around and we used to make sure that these apartments are great for viewing. And it used to be a lot. And the lady who was in charge, I remember her saying to us, guys, I know that it's a lot, but I want you to tackle this one tile at a time, one area at a time. In that moment, the only thing that matters is that area. And that has kept me in everything, especially when it comes to online business, online systems, making sure that you're efficient. It seems like a lot. You're trying to
Hmm.
get your client experience together. You're trying to get your sales systems together, your marketing systems together. You're trying to make sure that you have SOPs, and you're trying to make sure that you have a system in place for team management, which are the 5 systems I think everybody should have, by the way. Um, but you can't do it all at once.
Hmm.
So understanding what are the things that are burning down in your business right now, what needs the most attention in this moment, and how you're going to make use of that. And tackling it one step at a time, one tile at a time. In that moment, only thing that matters is that little bit of work that you're doing now. You do it well, and then the next day you tackle something else.
That's such good advice. I love that because, yes, it can be just also overwhelming and then we just don't start
Oh,
anything.
yes.
And we're concentrating on the one thing in front of us, and then going to the next is what's so important. How do people find you to be able to work with you? What's the easiest way?
Yeah, you can find me via my website. It is Zhara-Marie.org. So that is ZHARAMARIE.org. And that connects to all my socials. I'm on Instagram. I've been loving threads lately. So you'll find me on there running my mouth, but it's amazing.
Oh, good. We talked before we hit record about Threads and how it's been kind of our favorite platform to
Oh,
just
yeah.
check into and connect with people. The engagement there is unreal when you give it
Yeah.
an opportunity and give it a chance. So yeah, Threads is
Yeah.
super cool. I'm so glad you said that. And I will have everything in the show notes for sure. And before we end off, I love just ending with like just a thoughtful question about what does success mean to you in business and in life?
That's a very good question. Um, I've always said this that I just want to be happy. I just
Hmm.
want to be content and at peace. And for me, that's what success looks like. And that comes with having the freedom of movement, the freedom of time, and also financial freedom as well.
Yeah.
So I'll always have like different levels of success because as you get to one level, you want to get to the next level. But at baseline, happiness, fulfillment, and contentment, and knowing that I'm in a place where I can provide myself with that, to me,
Hmm.
that's pretty damn successful. So, like, I've never had major income goals. I've always had goals that you work towards because obviously that's why you work, right?
Right.
Um, but it has always been looking ahead. What will this income give me has been some of my biggest pushing factors. One of my biggest push factors is what will this income give me?
Mm.
And that's the happiness. That's the joy. That's then people say money can't buy happiness. It sure can because it sure
That's right.
can because it will buy you the freedom of time. It will give you the freedom of movement, control, that you might not be able to get if you are not an entrepreneur, to be honest. It's a little harder to get that time. Yeah, I work overtime for myself any day. So
Yeah, the freedom of movement. I love that. And it's such a great way to wrap this conversation up. I really enjoyed meeting you and having this discussion today. I know someone will take some value out of it, and I appreciate your time.
yeah, it was such a pleasure, Kim. Such a pleasure. I loved it, and I can't wait to connect to more off camera and off podcast.
That's great. We will. We'll stay in touch. All right.
Mhm.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye bye.